Hello, and welcome back to Game Domain. Today, we will be bringing you guys another ranking video, and boy is this one a goodie. This video may be a little bit controversial, so just please give us a chance to voice our opinion on where we think the games of this acclaimed franchise stack up. The franchise in question is widely regarded as the highest rated game series of all time, and some of the numbers show that. The gaming community objectively recognizes the true greatness of almost every single one of this franchise's 17 entries, 10 of which have a 90+ rating on Metacritic, and 6 of which are eligible for the acclaimed Metacritic 95+ club, meaning that they have a rating of 95 or higher. Very few games have achieved such a title, and 6 of the small number are from this one series alone. Now, let's cut to the chase. You should probably already know what franchise we're talking about. This franchise is none other than The Legend of Zelda. Just about every entry to this franchise has struck fans' hearts, and I mean, what is there not to like about it? The incredible puzzles, dungeons, bosses, openness, music, adventure, the list goes on and on. We could go on for days about how great this franchise is and the impact it has had on the fans since day one, but let's get rolling in the video. Our countdown is going to be split up into 2 parts, the first of which will feature the 7 non-console games, and the second part will feature the 10 home console games. Every single one of the 17 Legend of Zelda games will be represented, and we will give a brief synopsis about why we have placed it at that spot. We don't have time to go through each game's plot and all its features, but we will be sure to shed light on what makes each of these games so special. So let's head into the video. Coming in as the worst non-console Legend of Zelda game is also the worst game in the whole series. Triforce Heroes was really the only game in the entire series that felt more like a fill-in than a meaningful title. It was meant to be a sequel to A Link Between Worlds, staying on the timeline set forward by the Windwalker, known as the Adult Link timeline. The game re-implemented the multiplayer fighting style that we saw in Four Swords Adventure, and some fans liked that, but most weren't a fan. The game was the most recent installment of the series before Breath of the Wild, showing that Nintendo made a big leap in greatness between those 2 titles. Triforce Heroes was released back in 2015 for the Nintendo 3DS and received a 73 rating from Metacritic, making it the lowest rated game in the series by far, as it is the only game rated in the 70s. Now we are starting to get into the notion that really every Zelda game is a good game, but this ranking will help us to differ the good from the great. The number 6 spot is going to The Legend of Zelda Spirit Tracks. Spirit Tracks was a direct sequel to Phantom Hourglass and an indirect sequel to The Wind Waker. Spirit Tracks introduced some fan-favorite aspects in the franchise, mainly the inclusion of the Spirit Train. This is Link's method and way of transportation for traveling around Hyrule, and he takes it to different towns and dungeons in which he sets off and explores on foot. The progression system of the story is a perfect blend of exploring and solving, and you have a good amount of choice in how you go about going through your main quest. Spirit Tracks was released back in 2009 on the Nintendo DS and received an 87 rating from Metacritic, putting it at the lower half in terms of rating of the Legend of Zelda franchise. The number 5 spot goes to the direct sequel of The Wind Waker, The Legend of Zelda Phantom Hourglass. Don't get us wrong, Phantom Hourglass is a very good game. Although its ranking may not reflect that, you have to keep in mind just how great all these games are and how hard it is to rank them. Phantom Hourglass takes place right after The Wind Waker and Link's defeat of Ganon. And now flooded Hyrule is a wide open boat path for Link and Tetra as they look for a new beginning for the kingdom. Tetra is kidnapped by Phantom Link figures, and Link comes across an item known as the Phantom Hourglass. Yeah, if you're familiar with the series, you know that most of the games are basically named after an item that Link uses in the game to further the story. Link has to use the Phantom Hourglass in different ways along his journey to further the plot and defeat the evil pirate Bellum to save Tetra. Phantom Hourglass was a step in the right direction for handheld Zelda games, and it started a line of 3 really good games for fans to enjoy on the go. Phantom Hourglass came out in 2007 for the Nintendo DS and received a 90 rating from Metacritic, making it one of the 10 games in the series to be ranked 90 or higher. The number 4 spot is going to go to the game that started it all for the handheld Legend of Zelda games, Link's Awakening. The game's story picks up right after the Oracle of Seasons, and Link is setting off on a journey by boat. His ship is destroyed and he's washed up on the shore of Koholint Island. Link is told by an island native to find 8 instruments, and your objective is clear. Link has to defeat 8 dungeons across the island and has to make his way to the summit of Mount Tamaranch and play a song known as the Ballad of the Windfish. The Windfish's egg breaks, and Link goes in to defeat the last and final enemy in his quest. Although Link's only true enemy is his own mind, and he is taken on by an evil being who takes the form of Ganon and other enemies from Link's past adventures. Upon defeat of the evil being, Link realizes that this was all a dream and finds himself lying on a piece of wood in the ocean. Link's Awakening was a clever take on the series and was certainly a great addition to the Game Boy lineup. Fans were now able to enjoy The Legend of Zelda on the go, and in a journey that feels just like any other Link journey. Link sets off to destroy evil like he always does, but then you find out it's all a dream and just a play on Link's imagination. Link's Awakening was released in 1993 for the Nintendo Game Boy and currently does not have an official rating score from Metacritic. The number 3 spot is going to be shared by 2 games that run hand in hand: The Legend of Zelda, Oracle of Seasons, and Oracle of Ages. The Oracle's games are a short little side quest for fans who love the main Zelda series, but they still really do feel like any other mainline Zelda game. The plots of the 2 games are both very similar and revolve around the Maku Tree. However, both games have linked, no pun intended, endings. Link stops Ganon's revival and saves Princess Zelda, and they both escape the crumbling castle to safety. The Oracle's games have smooth gameplay similar to the likes of Link's Awakening. The slingshot is also exclusive in Seasons, as it is one of Link's most iconic weapons of choice. The game mainly consists of dungeons and just the general overworld, with the overworld being different between the 2 games. Oracles of Seasons and Oracles of Ages were both released for the Game Boy Color back in 2001 and received a 92 rating from Metacritic, placing them somewhere in the middle of the series. Coming in as the number 2 Zelda handheld game is the MINISH Cap. MINISH Cap is a prequel to the Four Swords and Four Swords Adventure games, as it tells the story of Vaati and the birth of the Four Sword. Throughout Link's quest, he is transformed into a race known as the MINISH, which are small creatures that are said to have aided Link in his saving of Hyrule in years past. The MINISH helped Link in this adventure yet again by leading the charge to restoring the Four Sword and taking down the game's very difficult final dungeon, the Dark Hyrule Castle. MINISH Cap is another fun little side adventure for the hardcore Zelda fanbase, as casual fans wouldn't be so into it. There are a few graphical and gameplay enhancements made to benefit the player, as the Game Boy Advance's more powerful engine was put to the test to further the abilities of the handheld Zelda line. The game is more detailed, and it just goes to show that Nintendo really wanted more fans to get hooked into this line of the series. MINISH Cap came out in 2005 for the Game Boy Advance and received an 89 rating from Metacritic, as well as gaining multiple awards as the 2005 GBA Game of the Year. The number 1 spot should be no surprise to most of you, and we're just gonna get right into it. The Legend of Zelda: A Link Between Worlds is the pinnacle of the handheld Zelda line, and is truly what Nintendo always intended a handheld Zelda title to be. A Link Between Worlds is not a sequel, but a successor to the fan favorite A Link to the Past, and it certainly grabbed the hearts of a lot of fans of that old classic. The plot is similar to most, as Link works to save the world from evil and finds the Master Sword and wields its true power to seal away the darkness and restore the Triforce. Princess Zelda does have a big role in this game, and the developers utilize her role in a great way. Zelda was in the game just at the right times and instructed you just when you needed her. I mean, hey, Nintendo is using Zelda's appearance from A Link Between Worlds in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, so this game has to mean something special. Although the game is not perfect, it is perfect in the sense of handheld Zelda games and what they were always meant to be. The game was very well received by fans and received much high praise upon release and still to this day. A Link Between Worlds was released for the Nintendo 3DS in 2013 and received a 91 rating from Metacritic, putting it right in the middle of all of the Zelda games. Now we are going to get into what most of you have likely clicked on this video for, the ranking of all 10 of the mainline console Legend of Zelda games. So without further ado, let's get into the second part of this countdown. Where should we start with this number 10 spot? This game isn't really a mainline memorable Zelda title, but it is only on this portion of the list due to its release being for the Nintendo GameCube. The Legend of Zelda: Four Swords Adventure is really just a cooperative multiplayer game in which you can play a few different modes such as Shadow Battle and Navitrackers, which was only in the Japanese release of this game. There really isn't much else to say about this game other than the fact that it really does just look bad for a game on the GameCube, and certainly doesn't hold up in the memories of at least 75% of the Zelda fanbase. Four Swords Adventure was released back in 2004 for the GameCube, and received an 86 rating from Metacritic, putting it on the lower end of the Zelda spectrum. We're just going to be straightforward here and tell you that ranking this game this low in the ranking hurts. Like, it hurts a lot. This game meant so much to so many people and was a great sequel to what started it all for the Legend of Zelda franchise. The Legend of Zelda 2, The Adventures of Link, is the only numbered game in the series and really isn't a bad game. The game takes place a few years after the events of the original, and Link is now a 16-year-old who has been awoken from a deep slumber to save Princess Zelda yet again. Link defeats the game's several dungeons and reunites the three parts of the Triforce, which awakens the princess, and the game comes to a close. The Adventures of Link is very nostalgic to a lot of people, and its story and gameplay were great for its time. But as time went on, more and more games were released that were just flat out better than this one. The Adventures of Link was released for the Nintendo Entertainment System, or NES for short, back in 1987, and received an unofficial 73 rating from Metacritic, presumptively putting it towards the lower end of the series. Oh no. We said the last ranking hurt, but this one hurts even more. Before you go crazy in the comments or dislike or unsubscribe, we are just going to be completely frank with you guys. Our choice for the number 8 greatest Legend of Zelda game is the original Legend of Zelda. Yes, we know. How could you rank the original in the series number 8? Now, don't get us wrong, this game is an incredible game and was revolutionary for its time, and well, it basically gave us the Legend of Zelda that we love today. If it wasn't for Link's initial defeat of Ganon, restoration of the Triforce, and returning it to Princess Zelda to establish peace, we would never have some of the future incredible games we have today. So, The Legend of Zelda is not a bad game in any respect. It just hasn't stood out as much compared to the newer and better games that have come after it. One game in particular introduced the world to an open-world 3D adventure, and really the franchise took off and ran with it from there. This game is just, sadly, outdated. And while still an incredibly fun game to play and a great experience for any gamer, there are just better games that have come after it. The original Legend of Zelda was released in 1986 for the NES and has an unofficial 84 rating from Metacritic, putting it at the latter end of the spectrum. You keep hearing us refer to the latter end of the spectrum for a lot of these games, and here on in, every game we rank is on the higher end of the spectrum for the franchise. These last 7 games are what defines the franchise and are all great and fun games that fans still play to this day. Let's start it off with number 7, The Legend of Zelda: Skyward Sword. Skyward Sword was very different from previous Zelda entries, and some of that was for the good and some for the bad. The story was shaken up a bit, as Link was now a resident of the floating town Skyloft and had to journey down to the unexplored surface to find Princess Zelda. The game is said to be the first chronological Zelda game, meaning that it is the first in the timeline. The game's graphics and gameplay were very smooth for its time, but haven't held up quite well over the past 7 years. To much delight, the Wii's motion controls were implemented only when they should have been, and not thrown at you like in other games. When it came to bigger franchise titles moving onto the Wii, Nintendo was careful not to overuse the motion control, as they would see tremendous backlash from fans. Many traditional Zelda elements are present in the game, but the big introduction was Link flying around on his Loftwing. The game tells the origin of the Kingdom of Hyrule, as at the end of the game, Zelda and Link decide to reside on the surface and establish the new kingdom as they watch over the Master Sword and the Triforce. Skyward Sword came out for the Nintendo Wii back in 2011 and received a 93 rating from Metacritic. Coming in at number 6, we have The Legend of Zelda: Twilight Princess. Twilight Princess really is the definition of different, and it sure worked and paid off. The game was developed with both the GameCube and Wii in mind, as it was released right when people began converting over to the Wii upon its release. It was released on the Wii as a launch title, and really just it had enhanced graphics from the GameCube version. The GameCube version was released the following month and was the last first-party game on the console. The game had a very eerie feel, creepier than anything we've seen before in the franchise. The game really expanded on the 3 main ideas of the 3D Zelda games: combat, exploration, and puzzle solving. The game's storyline takes place several centuries after Ocarina of Time. Link is taken during an invasion of his home village and is turned into a wolf. Link is then saved by Midna, who would go on to become one of the series' most beloved characters. Midna takes Link to Princess Zelda, and Zelda tags Link to help save Hyrule from the shadow beasts that have overcome the land. Link must go through a series of trials as a wolf before he can restore himself to Hylian form. Link eventually finds the Master Sword once again, and will use it to go on and steal away the darkness. Link and Midna return to Hyrule Castle and defeat Ganon, and save Zelda, and restore Hyrule back to its state of peace. Midna returns home, and there's a sudden balance between Hyrule and the Twilight Realm. The story is very different compared to most Zelda games, and Nintendo really pulled it off. The game is always fun to play, and there is never a dull spot in the story. Twilight Princess was released for the Nintendo GameCube and Nintendo Wii in 2006, and received a 95 rating from Metacritic. Coming in at number 5 is The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask, which is a sequel to the beloved Ocarina of Time. Majora's Mask is largely overshadowed by its predecessor, and we discuss a lot of that in our most recent episode of Games You Need, so be sure to check that out. Majora's Mask picks up a few months after Ocarina of Time, and the whole game takes place over the span of 3 days, in which Link needs to stop the moon from crashing into the world. I'll let that sink in. Okay. Link lifts the curses and, with the help of the 4 giants, halts the moon's impending path into Termina. Link defeats the evil Skull Kid inside the moon, and he saves the world for a second time in the last few months. Majora's Mask is truly a great game, and a great sequel to one of the greatest games of all time. Majora's Mask was well received by fans at the time, and has gone on to become increasingly more loved by the Zelda fanbase. The utilization of the many different masks in the game to further advance the plot, and the aspect of time management, as you only have 72 in-game hours to beat the game, was a really great addition into the series. Majora's Mask was released back in 2000 for the N64 and received a 95 rating from Metacritic. We have been talking about certain games being so different from others in the series, and when you look at the Legend of Zelda series as a whole, there is one game that jumps out as different. And yes, you've probably guessed it, The Legend of Zelda: The Wind Waker. Wind Waker introduced us the cartoony graphics that we never thought we'd love, and also created a bridge to a whole new Zelda timeline. After The Wind Waker, we saw many future Zelda titles use the same graphical appearance of Link, mainly the handheld games that we mentioned earlier in this video. A boat captain named Tetra is dropped into a forest on Link's birthday, and he ventures in the forest to save Tetra. In doing so, Link's sister gets swept up by the same bird that took Tetra. Tetra and Link set off to find his sister, and they journey from island to island via boat, and meet many new friends and enemies along the way. The main key components of a Zelda game return, as Link returns back to the Forsaken Forest towards the climax of the game to obtain the Master Sword, which eventually loses its power after Link and Tetra are outbattled by Ganon. Ganon notices the Triforce necklace on Tetra and realizes that Tetra is the reincarnation of Princess Zelda. Their ship, the King of Red Lions, reveals to them that under the water is the legendary kingdom of Hyrule, which had submerged long ago to stop Ganon's increasing power. Link eventually defeats Ganon and reunites the Triforce once again to save the land, and Link and Tetra set off to tame new land while the credits roll. The Wind Waker was a completely different take on Hyrule, and fans loved it. It is a great and fun adventure, and the traveling along the water aspect adds for a lot of fun. The graphics created the variant of Link that we know of today as Toon Link, who has become a fan favorite in the Super Smash Bros. Series as well. The Wind Waker came out in 2003 for the Nintendo GameCube and received a 96 rating from Metacritic, a largely uninhabited territory of game rankings. Now, while all of these games are truly great, we are now getting into the part of the ranking where each game is just absolutely astonishing, and we are not going to have time to go in depth as to why each of them are so amazing. Each of these next 3 games were featured as the number 6, number 5, and number 1 greatest Nintendo games of all time, so this really is illustrious territory. If you want to hear more about these games, then go check out our top 10 greatest Nintendo games of all time video, and these games really are considered some of the best games ever from any console or company. The one underlying theme that unites them together is one word: greatness. Coming in at number 3 is The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past. A Link to the Past really defined greatness back in the day, and it was possibly the greatest 2D game of all time. A Link to the Past quickly became Nintendo's flagship single game on the SNES and helped to show Nintendo's true capabilities to the world. The game looks aesthetically beautiful for its time, and if you took a non-gamer and showed them the game, they would most likely think that it was made yesterday for the App Store or something. A Link to the Past is a prequel to the original 2 Zelda games, and Link is awoken by a telepathic message from the imprisoned Princess Zelda, which is basically the same way that The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild started off. The main feature is the 2 worlds, the normal world and the Sacred Realm, which was now the Dark World due to Ganon's takeover of that world. Link's goal in this game is to restore peace in the Dark World and bring it back to the Sacred Realm. Link ventures into the Dark World and rescues the descendants of the 7 sages who reside in the dungeons. Link eventually defeats Ganon and restores the Dark World and creates eternal peace between Hyrule, the Triforce, and the Sacred Realm. Some of you may look at this game and ask, what's so great about this game? Well, everything is the real answer. The game introduced so much into the franchise, and most of which stayed in the franchise for the long run. The perfect blend of music, gameplay, mechanics, great combat, and mind-boggling puzzles all contribute to this game's greatness. Link's journey in A Link to the Past remains one of his best, and this game truly is amazing. A Link to the Past was released in 1991 for the SNES, the only Zelda game to be released on that console, and received a 95 rating from Metacritic, and is widely considered as one of the greatest games of all time. You know, we have a question for you guys. Is it possible for a game to be the most perfect blend of visual beauty, incredible, thought-out story, and over 100 mind-boggling puzzles to partake in? Well, yes, it is possible. And one game defines this dynamic equilibrium of sorts, and that game is The Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild. Breath of the Wild is the most beautiful and most open game we have ever seen, and we expect that it will hold that title for a very long time. After you make your way past the 3 shrines of the Great Plateau, you are open to a world of 120 shrines, 14 Sheikah Towers, over a dozen settlements, and so much more. You can play this game at your own pace. If you want, you can go straight to Hyrule Castle and fight Ganon. Or you can go on the ultimate quest to tackle as many shrines as you want, restore all 4 divine beasts and the memories of the 4 champions and their people, and obtain the iconic Master Sword. You can collect hundreds of weapons and shields and bows, and all of them only have a short lifespan. There's only one unbreakable sword, and that is the Master Sword, which has to be charged for 10 minutes after a lot of use. The game's graphics might be the greatest of any video game to date, and the beautifully placed little dab of cartoonish feel from the Wind Waker adds a whole lot of fun. It would take us an hour-long video to talk about all of the great things in this game, and all of the great and wonderful quests you can go on to find your eventual common goal of saving Hyrule. Breath of the Wild is also the first game in the series to have DLC, and the second DLC, The Champion's Ballad, offers about 15 brand new shrines and a whole new divine beast to take on after you beat all 4 divine beasts and Ganon. This game is almost never-ending, as it can take you up to over 100 hours to defeat Ganon, all the divine beasts, and all 120 shrines. The openness and beauty of this game will always stay around in the hearts of many, and was a great way to introduce Nintendo fans to the true power of the brand new Nintendo Switch. Breath of the Wild was released in 2017 on the Wii U and as a launch title for the Nintendo Switch, and it received a 97 rating from Metacritic, and just like A Link to the Past, is widely considered as one of the greatest games of all time. Well, this number 1 choice shouldn't be a surprise. This game was also our greatest Nintendo game of all time, and is probably the single greatest video game of all time, like, ever. Once again, just like Breath of the Wild, it would take us an hour or maybe even longer to talk about all the amazing things this game did, but we're going to try to make this short and sweet. This game was the first game to truly master the idea of 3D gaming, and it was just so beautiful. The game took all of the familiar words, Hyrule, Master Sword, Triforce, Goron, Eldin, Zora, Gerudo, and so many more, and created a world so grand that it made us feel as if we were truly in it. Nowadays, it's normal for a game to make us feel like we are in the world, but this game was the first to give people that feeling. Ocarina of Time had so many incredible puzzles, astounding 3D combat, and head-spinning dungeons. We're looking at you, Water Temple. That stupid temple. Such a stupid place. The music in this game accompanies Link's adventure so well, and every single track and tune in this game is so catchy and masterfully composed. This game has been dubbed a walking patent office due to the dozens of features first implemented in this game that would go on to become video game staples. Who can forget the totally not irritating Navi? I mean, hey, listen, right? Ocarina of Time is the most critically acclaimed game of all time, as is basically the most iconic game ever created. If you call yourself a gaming fan, you know the true impact that this game has had on the gaming community. The ratings for this game are 98 to 100%, 10 out of 10, and 5 out of 5 all across the board from dozens of gaming networks and communities. The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time was released in 1998 for the N64 and received a 99% rating from Metacritic, making it the highest rated game of all time. Certainly worthy of being the greatest Legend of Zelda game of all time, as well as the greatest Nintendo game of all time, and, get this, the single greatest video game of all time. Woo! Wow, that was a long one. We wanted to make sure to give you our best and most thorough opinion on each game in this franchise, which is widely considered one of the greatest franchises of all time. We wanted to acknowledge the greatness that this franchise showcases in each of its installments and all of the incredible feats it has achieved. Tell us what you think of our ranking in the comments below, and don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. Be sure to check out the links in the description as well, as there you will find our Discord, our sister channel, and some of our recent videos. We have a lot of great projects lined up for the summer, so thanks for watching, and stay tuned to Game Domain for more great content.